Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmates. I am Jey Sedentario, and together with me is Willie Mae Ann Sepe and Daimabel Sinogaya. They are my group mates, and we are the reporters for this afternoon. Our topic for this afternoon is all about the first cry of the revolution. Aside from that, we will be discussing or analyzing primary sources. We will try to identify the similarities and differences of these primary sources. So I will discuss first the historical context. The Philippines Revolution of 1896 began with what later became known as the First Cry, or it is the initial move of the Filipinos to begin the revolution for independence. They did this by tearing up cirulas and proclaiming the start of the fight for independence. So the event happened after the Katipunan was exposed on August 19, 1896, and the Spaniards began to crack down on suspected rebels, meaning the Spaniards began or start dealing with bad or illegal behavior against the Filipinos or the Katipuneros. So, as a result, the Katipunan Supremo Andres Bonifacio proceed to designated meeting place outside the city to decide on their next move. So the original plan was to start the revolution at the end of August. But following the arrest of the Katipuneros, Bonifacio found it wise to begin the revolution that day and attack Manila at the end of the month. So, in 1911, monument to the heroes of 1896 was erected in Balintawak, where beginning in 1908. So it was believed there that the first cry occurred in Balintawak on August 26, 1896. So what are the issues of this historical context and to the primary sources of the first cry revolution? Why we need to analyze the primary sources of this event? So here's the thing. The date and place of the event were later contradicted by different Katipunan personalities who claimed that they were there at the time. So kinsa kaning Katipunan personalities nga ni contradict? So another thing, in 1963, the National Historical Commission, today we call that National Historical Commission of the Philippines, or NHCP, they decided that by following extensive research of primary sources, the first cry of the Philippine Revolution of 1896 happened on August 23, 1896 at Pugad, Lawin, now part of Project 8 in Quezon City. So, the controversy, however, persists with the historians and other personalities' minds, especially the descendants of the Katipuneros witnesses, claiming that the original and the official date and place are wrong. So, because of these issues and conflicts, we will now be discussing the primary sources that are mentioned. We will go deeper and analyze the three accounts of the different Katipunan personalities who claimed that they are present during the meeting of the Katipuneros. These Katipunan personalities are Pio Valenzuela, Santiago Alvarez, and Guillermo Masangkay. So let's start with Pio Valenzuela's account with a question: who is Pio Valenzuela? What are his roles in the Katipunan in order to validate his account? So, Pio Valenzuela was a Filipino physician and a major figure during the Philippine Revolution against the Spaniards colonizers. So, he was born in Pulo, Bulacan. In present day, Pulo, Bulacan, we call that Valenzuela City. Later on, we will know ngano gitawag siya og Valenzuela City. So, Pio Valenzuela was a medical student at the University of Santo Tomas when he joined the barely week-old Katipunan, a secret society founded by Andres Bonifacio on July 7, 1892, in Tondo, Manila. Valenzuela secretly established Katipunan branches in many areas in Morong and in Bulacan. Morong, today we call it Rizal Province. It was Dr. Valenzuela who was commissioned by Bonifacio to talk to Dr. Rizal, who was deported to the Pitan and in Zamboanga about the founding of the Katipunan and its plan to rise against the Spaniards, colonizers, Spanish authorities. So, Dr. Valenzuela was the one who tried to convince our national hero, which is Jose Rizal, to join the revolutionary movement. After he retired from politics, he wrote his memoirs of the revolutionary days. But historians have since worried of his autobiography because of some inconsistencies in his version of events, particularly about the meetings of Dr. Jose Rizal in Dapitan on 1896. Valenzuela died on April 6, 1956 at the age of 83. In 1963, the town Pulo was renamed Valenzuela in his honor and became city in 1998. So now, after knowing Pio Valenzuela, I will discuss his account. In his account, it was said that the first place of refuge of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, Aguedo del Rosario, and Pio Valenzuela was in Balintawak. So they arrived there on August 19, 1896. The first place where some 500 members of Katipunan met on August 22, 1896 was the house and yard of Apolonio Samson at Kangkong. So based on my research, Kangkong is a small province of Caloocan. So in the meeting, views were only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. So that was their first meeting. It was in Balintawak. So in their second meeting, it was in Pugad Lawin, the house and storehouse and yard of Juan Ramos. Juan Ramos is the son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on August 23, 1896. The discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spanish government should be started on August 29, 1896. So after that tumultuous meeting, many of those present tore their cedula certificates and shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!" So that was the account of Pio Valenzuela, and we found out that the meeting not just happened once but twice, since in the first meeting in August 22, 1896, only views were exchanged, but then in August 23, in their second meeting, they discussed the date of revolution, which is started on August 29, 1896. So according to Valenzuela's account. So let's go on with the next account to be discussed by Willie Mae Ann Sepe. Thank you so much.
So this is the next account, the account of General Santiago Alvarez. So who is General Santiago Alvarez? General Santiago Alvarez was a revolutionary general and a founder and honorary president of the First Directorate. He was born in Imos, Cavite, and Alvarez is also known as Kidlat ng Apoy because of his Kidlat ng Apoy, or the lightning of fire, because of his inflamed bravery and dedication as commander in the Battle of Dalhican, Cavite. He was popularly acclaimed as the hero of the Battle of Dalhican. Although marginalized within the ranks of the revolution within the ascendancy of a rival faction, Alvarez continued to support the cause of the revolution. So after the revolution, he enrolled at the University of Santo Tomas, later transferred to the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, where he obtained a Bachelor of Arts. He then took up law at the Liceo de Manila. So, upon establishment of the American civil government in the Philippines, Alvarez assisted Pascual H. Poblet, Loke Santos, and many others in the organizations of the Nacionalista Party, wherein he later became president of its directorate. So, in 1902, he presided over the Junta Magna de la Comisión de la Paz, which also means the Great Council of the Peace Commission. So, the junta was created to accelerate the rehabilitation of the country from the destruction that was caused by the war. So, Santiago Alvarez died on October 30. I forgot to put kalimut ko butang ani na slide. Sorry. He died October 30, 1930 at the age of 58 in San Pablo City, and her body was buried at the San Pablo Municipal Cemetery. So, here is the account. So, according to Alvarez, they went on trekking to Kangkong. So, he said, we started our trek to Kangkong at about 11 that night. We walked through the rain over dark expanses of muddy meadows and fields. Our clothes drenched and our bodies numb by the cold wind, we plodded wordlessly. According to him, it was nearly 2 in the morning when they reached the house of Brother Apolonio Samson in Kangkong. So, we crowded into the house to rest and warm ourselves. We were so tired that night. So, after hanging our clothes out to dry, we soon fell asleep. The Supremo began assigning guards at 5 o'clock the following morning, which is Saturday, August 22, 1896. He placed a detachment at the Balintawak boundary and another at the backyard to the north of the house, kung asa sila nag-gather. So, no less than 300 men assembled at bidding of the Supremo Andres Bonifacio. So, altogether, they carried assorted weapons, bolos, spears, daggers, a dozen small revolvers, and a rifle used by its owner. And there is also Lieutenant Manuel for hunting the birds. So, that night, Supremo Bonifacio was restless because of fear of a sudden attack by the enemy. He was worried over the thought that any of the couriers carrying the letters sent by Emilio Jacinto could have been intercepted, and in that eventuality, the enemy would surely know their whereabouts and attack them on the sly. So, that's why he decided that it was better to move to a site called Bahay Turo. At 10 o'clock that Sunday morning, which is August 23, they arrive at Bahay Turo. So, their members have grown to more than 500, and the house, yard, and warehouse at Cabezang Chora was getting crowded. With the Katipuneros. And he also said that the generosity of Cabezang Melchora was no less than that of Apollonio Samson. Because like Apollonio Samson, Cabezang Melchora also opened her granary and had plenty of rice pounded and animals slaughtered to feed us that day. So, the following day, which is Monday, August 24, the Supremo called a meeting at 10 o'clock that morning inside Cabezang Melchora's band. So, the Katipuneros came and guess what? Nanaghan sila. They increase to more than 1,000. So, ang nahitabo, ang uban kay naa sa gawas. Wala na sila naigo sa sulod sa barn, sa house. So, flanking him on both sides at the head of the table were Dr. Pio Valenzuela, naapod si Emilio Jacinto, Brescio Pantas, Enrique Pacheco, Ramon Bernardo, Pantilaon Torres, Francisco Carrion, Vicente Fernandez, Teodoro Plata, and others. So, Alvarez said that they were so crowded that time. Okay, as I have said earlier na ang uban kay naa sa gawas outside the barn. So, these are the following matters that were approved at the meeting. So, first, an uprising to defend the people's freedom was to be started at the midnight of Saturday, August 29, 1896. The second is to be on state of alert so that the Katipunan forces could strike should the situation arise where the enemy was at disadvantage. Thus, the uprising could be started earlier than the agreed time of midnight of 29 August 1896 should be a favorable opportunity arise at that date. Everyone should steel himself and be resolute in the struggle that was imminent. And the third, his immediate objective was the capture of Manila. So, in summary, before that, after the adjournment of the meeting at 12 noon, there were tumultuous shouts. They shouted, "Long live the sons of the people." So, in summary, the account of Santiago Alvarez, he believed that the first cry of the Philippine Revolution happened in August 29, 1896.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Daimabel Sinogaya, and I will going to discuss the account of Guillermo Masangkay. Guillermo Masangkay was born on June 25, 1867 in Misek, Tondo, Manila. His parents were Domingo Masangkay of Batangas and Victoria Rafael of Tanza, Cavite. He was the youngest of 4 children. Masangkay had no formal education. However, he had a strong intellectual drive. He read assiduously books borrowed from his neighbors. Thus, although he was only a banquero or boatman, he became fluent in Spanish and deeply aware of the political and social conditions of his time. He joined the underground society when he was only 17 years old. He is a bosom friend of Andres Bonifacio and the Supremo's personal counselor. He became one of the first members of the Katipunan when it was founded by Andres Bonifacio on July 7, 1892, together with Ladislao Diwa and Teodoro Plata, along with Restituto Javier, Vicente Molina, Valentin Diaz, Brescio Pantas, Roman Basa, and etc. He was also the Revolutionary General during the Filipino-American War. Guillermo Masangkay died on May 30, 1963. According on Masangkay's account, on August 26th, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson, the kabisa of that barrio of Caloocan. At about 9 o'clock in the morning of August 26, the meeting was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary. The purpose of that meeting was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. Teodoro Plata, Brescio Pantas, and Pio Valenzuela were all opposed to starting the revolution too early. They reasoned that the people would be in distress if the revolution were started without adequate preparation. Plata was very forceful in his agreement, stating that the uprising could not very well be started without arms and food for the soldiers. Andres Bonifacio, sensing that he would lose the discussion then, left the session hall and talked to the people who were waiting outside for the result of the meeting of the leaders. He told the people that the leaders were arguing against starting the revolution early and appealed to them in a fiery speech. Bonifacio then asked the people to give a pledge that they were to revolt. He wants the people to destroy their cedulas that will serve as a sign of ending their connection with the Spaniards. With tears in their eyes, the people as one man pulled out their cedulas and tore them into pieces. It was the beginning of the formal declaration of the separation from Spanish rule. When the people's pledge was obtained by Bonifacio, he returned to the session hall and informed the leaders of what took outside and told them that the people want to revolt and destroy their cedulas. The board of directors, in spite of the protest of Plata, Pantas, and Valenzuela, voted for the revolution. And when this was decided, the people outside shouted, "Long live the Philippine Republic!" The accounts of Valenzuela, Alvarez, and Masangkay have similarities and differences. So, the events that happened during the first revolution of 1896, that was later known as the First Cry, can be seen in the three accounts. So, according to the account of Pio Valenzuela, the first cry happened on August 23, 1896 at Pugadlawin, Quezon City. On the account of Santiago Alvarez, it happened on August 29, 1896 at Bahay Turo, Quezon City. While on the account of Guillermo de Masangkay, it happened on August 26, 1896 at Balintawak. In 1963, the National Historical Commission, that today is the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, or the NHCP, decided that, following extensive research of primary sources, the first cry of the Philippine Revolution of 1896 happened on August 23, 1896 at Pugadlawin, now part of Project 8 in Quezon City. And lastly, the relevance of the first cry in the Philippine history. So the cry of the rebellion in Pugadlawin marked the start of the Philippine Revolution in 1896, which eventually led to the independence of the country in 1898. And that would be all for the first cry of the revolution. Thank you for listening. And once again, good afternoon.